As I sit here getting ready to write my next book on RPG design, for today's critical thought, we're going to talk about some classic JRPG gameplay. Games like Call of Duty, God of War, a Battlefield, and there's that other one, the big name franchise that just got a reboot. It was very divisive. I think it was Resident Evil, right? So while all the JRPG fans have imploded in terms of rage, our real topic for today is how the game industry really took to RPGs and how almost everything became an RPG in the 2010s. And what does that mean for design today? The 2000s was really a period that became defined around action-based or reflex-driven design. This is where we saw the rise of many prominent franchises, from Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, God of War, Bayonetta, Devil May Cry, action horror with Resident Evil, Dead Space, and of course, the kind of like blockbuster or AAA movie of franchises like what was it? Uncharted. We would then get into The Last of Us, and the many bombastic AAA licensed games. But as we enter the 2010s, something changed, and kind of rising part and parcel with the growth of roguelike and roguelite gameplay, we began to see more games experiment or integrate RPG or abstraction based design in their titles. This would be stuff like, of course, The Witcher, Borderlands, Call of Duty, again, for some reason, God of War, and many more games that I could spend the next 20 minutes listing if I could find all of them on a list somewhere. But this is not without coincidence. As we enter the 2010s, RPG and abstraction-based design became very popular to implement from indie to AAA for several reasons. The first one has to do with reducing the skill curve, or skill ceiling, of a lot of games. When we look at the popularity of action-driven games, the Devil May Cries and so on, they are, again, entirely reflex-based. If you're not good at speeding up, dealing with enemy attacks, dodging, parrying, whatever, you're not going to get far in those games unless you get good. With an abstracted based leveling or equipment, suddenly you can get around areas that you're not good at when it comes to reflex based design. If you can't dodge or parry to save your life, just put on the heaviest armor you can find and just tank it all. That's what was one of the common strategies for Dark Souls with Havel's Set. Just stand there and laugh at it. Enemies are just like whacking you and you're just doing like this amount of damage taken. And this became a very popular way to again mitigate some of that difficulty. If you can't, dodge reliably or get around things, go level up. Go raise your vitality stat or be able to unlock better gear and so on. Now, speaking about gear, the other reason why RPG design became so popular, and especially in live service and free-to-play games, is with progression and something that we've talked about before when it comes to endless scale. That there is always another number. You can go from tens of damage to hundreds to millions to quintillions to every other term that I've learned from playing idle games over the past 20 years. And numbers in this respect are a very easily quantifiable way to measure progression. I'm level 1. Now I'm level 800. Now I'm level 10 billion. And we can see this endless draw in a lot of games that have implemented RPG-based gear, everyone's favorite system, the gear rating that we see in a lot of games. And when we look at this in the mobile live service aspect, again, it gives these games almost an infinite avenue to keep growing. Oh, level 60 was the max one last month? Now it's level 65. You went from 5-star characters, now there's 6 stars. And we can just keep raising and raising things up. What was considered the top tier in 2010 can be now considered horrible in 2022. Speaking of which, Marvel Contest of Champions, a game that I reviewed for its pay-to-winness recently, or at this time, is about to add in 7-star banners and gotchas to its games. Again, adding that extra layer of things to go for and spend more money on. So it's with these two elements why we saw this big push towards RPGs. And even in reflex-driven games or people who prefer reflex-driven titles, the allure of abstracted progression is certainly there. This idea that not only can you be really good at shooting a gun or swinging a sword, but now we can have specific builds and you can min-max everything and make that perfectly optimized soldier, warrior, killer, whatever in your game. And again, as evident with everything from Call of Duty to God of War, Diablo Immortal, and so on, this stuff really works. But it does raise a very interesting question. Do we call these games RPGs? I'm going to have to answer it because I'm going to be talking about it in my next book. I can't just fill the book with every action game released in the past 20 years. But ultimately, no matter how many stats, how many values and modifiers and randomly generated gear, these games would not really be considered RPGs. If I seriously said that, I'm sure all those JRPG fans at the beginning would come back and come after me. But this raises again the limitations and the considerations when it comes to abstracted progression. That abstracted progression, and I can't really think of a good term for this, but it oftentimes rings hollow in a lot of these games. If I swing a sword and it does 5 points of damage, and I swing the sword again and it does 8 trillion points of damage, what changed from a moment-to-moment standpoint? Nothing. And it's oftentimes why games that are just built on the chase or the illusion of numbers meaning progress, I tend to lose interest in them when that's all it becomes. Which is kind of surprising considering all the idle-based games that I have played. I've barely even scratched the surface in something like Cookie Clicker. Because, again, the whole act of making numbers go up to make other numbers go down, it has a very limited lifespan. Diablo 3's endgame bored the heck out of me, despite the fact that I made, I think, good 10 to 15 characters over my time all getting to endgame and doing the season play. But the problem is that RPG systems in this respect don't really add up to being an RPG. When we sit down and actually try and consider what is an RPG in this respect, a good RPG is a game that is built on customization. On this idea that you are building a character, you are building your own warrior, your own mage, necromancer, dinosaur mancer, whatever the heck is in your game. And how that character behaves and how they grow is entirely up to you. If you're just taking a predefined character and just slapping on +5 handgun, +6 pants, that's not really a decision. It's not really creating that element of choice. And it's why, for a lot of the AAA games that have tried to adopt these RPG systems, they end up feeling both very artificial and very flat in how you play them. See, the other aspect about using progression with numbers, of course, is that it can be used to heavily gate your game. You can be a really good aim and shooting at a game like Borderlands or Call of Duty, or really great at action design. But if the game says that your gear is 5 levels lower than the enemies, it doesn't matter. Because as we all know, the shinier your belt buckle, the more resistant you are to bullets in the face in a game like The Division, or getting hit with everything in that game Gotham Knights that everyone is talking about right now. And again, these elements, despite being aspects of RPG-based games, they're not really RPGs in this respect. Now, I'm going to draw a line in the sand right here and say that If your game's RPG elements is just literally a perk tree, your game's not an RPG. Again, decide between do I want 0.75% movement speed and 1.25 walk speed is not really customizing your character in a meaningful way. And again, we have to use the term meaningful here because some people will just say, well, you're growing, so you must be an RPG. And even the whole idea of perk trees, I've grown to just generally not like them. I was watching the Escapist review, Zero Punctuation, for the new Plague Tale game. And Yahtzee brought up, I think, a really good point about games that let you, specialize in more like the main ways of playing it. This is your stealth tree. This is your action tree. This is your craftable tree. The problem is that if you're already good at this stuff, the trees and their perks are borderline worthless. Giving me faster, crawling speed and stealth, if I'm already stealthing around like Agent 47, 5% more crawl speed or crouch speed doesn't do anything for me. Giving me faster dodge recovery on combat is helpful, yes, but if I'm already perfect dodging, perfect reposing, how does that make that more interesting? And oftentimes, a lot of these skill trees and these perks in the RPGs like that, they generally are there to fix the issues that the designers have put in, or remove the limitations that are keeping the game from being fun. If I'm playing a game like Assassin's Creed and you lock my ability to stealth kill someone, or do a jump stealth attack, why should I feel excited about unlocking something that I should have had right from the start? And again, this is why when we talk about kind of the true RPGs, they are about you building a character and then giving you the tools to take that character further. And again, RPGs and by extension RPG design are some of the most gamey aspects of video games. There's not really an in-world explanation about why my fireball at level 5 is now more fiery than my level 3 fireball. But again, we put that aside in favor of the game. And for me, some of my favorite games that try to elicit that element of progression, I prefer it when it's far more organic to the game, as opposed to just saying, hey, I upgraded my sword swing and now I do 20 more damage with my sword. And one of my favorite games was Stalker Shadows of Chernobyl, where the entire progression model of it felt organic to that world. You start out just wearing like sweatshirts and sweatpants with a very rusty pistol. And in order to improve, you need to buy more gear. And there is a legitimate difference as you go through in a game like Stalker, going from getting a pistol to a submachine gun, to a shotgun, to then having this super high-tech military rifle that is both assault rifle and sniper. And again, the solutions to your gear issues are very simple. Are you having trouble killing enemies with a pistol? Buy all these better weapons. Are you taking too much damage? Here's all this armor. And as you grow and as you get something new, it changes how you play the game going forward. It's very much similar to the progression that we see in stuff like a Dyson Sphere program or a Factorio, where, hey, I'm just doing all this stuff by hand, let me build this automatic drill, and then let me get this conveyor belt, and then suddenly what I'm doing is progressively changing over the course of playing. Again, if you're playing a game like Factorio or Dyson Sphere and you are doing the same exact thing 10 minutes in the game as you are 10 hours in the game, something's not right. And yet a lot of games that try to label themselves as RPGs and RPG progression are just that. Hey, I beat up thugs in that Gotham Knights game that are level 2. Now I'm fighting level 16 thugs. And again, nothing is really changing. All you're doing is just adjusting stats. And there's no greater decision-making or thought process that goes into it. So, to wrap things up for our video, RPG mechanics and designs are very popular to implement. They add progression, variance, and replayability to a game. But not every game needs to have plus 27 sweatpants and 85% t-shirt boost reduction or whatever. And when you're trying to force it, trying to make that kind of live service grind in your game, it just really cheapens the entire experience. And again, no one wants to play a game that the entire RPG layer is just trying to hunt down clothes in your closet. We want to see customization. We want to see the ability to create your own unique strategy. So that my gun is fundamentally different than your gun, and how I use my skills are different from your skills. And that it's about that competition. Again, like as I'm talked about in my upcoming book on deck building, customization in this respect is a huge draw, and it's a huge aspect of RPG and abstracted design. That I'm not just using a cookie cutter sword or building my character like everyone else. This is my set. This is my character. And I want this character to go as far as it can. I want to tweak this so that every single decision, every single skill, stat, gear, magic, whatever, is by my choice. Not just because I had to go up this very linear perk tree going, this is +1 sword, +3 sword, +7 sword. Hey, and this is a +10 sword swinging perk. That doesn't drive interest. So, for those of you watching this, can you think of games that have done something like a gear rating system or implemented RPG-based design really well in an action-based game? I know a lot of you will point to stuff like the Souls games, and while I think they all work really well in the early to mid-game, I find that they tend to lack in terms of meaningful choice in RPG customization and progression in the late game, where at that point it's just me, dumping points into whatever stat I want to be, typically vitality, so I can actually defend against some of this stuff. But let me know in the comments down below. Do all that liking, subscribing, and commenting? Check out the Discord and Patreon. If you're interested in more of my thoughts on design and checking out my design books, they are available wherever books are being sold. Come back for discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where you examine the art and science of games.